Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am Ruth Osime.
And I am Majekodunmi-Oniru. Today's topic is child sexual abuse. We have special guests and a very informative show planned, so please stay tuned while we get started.
UNICEF reported in 2015 that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 10 boys in Nigeria has experienced sexual violence before the age of 18. Child sexual abuse is a critical public health issue in Nigeria, which robs children of their childhood, with 70% of sexually abused children experiencing multiple incidents of abuse. 90% of abusers are known to the child and family. With abused minors, 84% of the girls and 61% of boys don't know where to seek help. The incidence means that 15.8 million Nigerian children will be sexually abused before adulthood, and 11 million of them will deal with the secrecy, trauma, and long-term effects alone, without any intervention. The effects of sexual abuse of a child or young person can vary depending on the circumstances of the abuse and the child's developmental stage. The severity and number of traumas experienced from this abuse can have wide-reaching and long-lasting effects. Abuse in all its forms are a daily reality for many Nigerian children. Only a fraction ever receive help. Recently, a Dr. Kemi was found guilty of defiling his wife's 16-year-old niece. The convict had forced his victim to watch pornography, rub her breast, and ejaculated in her mouth. There was blood when he penetrated her, and he did this repeatedly over a period of time. For this dastardly act against a minor, the judge sentenced Dr. Kemi to life imprisonment each on the 2 counts, and rightfully so, which he said would run concurrently. There's a giant step forward. This is a giant step forward in the right direction.
Why do men rape? Why do fathers rape their little girls? In 2018, a man caught raping his 9-month-old baby blamed his acts on a drunken, uncontrollable urge for sexual pleasure due to a life of deep frustrations and pain. Another said he felt it was normal as his daughter's beauty reminded him of his wife's, which he is entitled to. Rape isn't just sex. It seems it is a toxic cycle for power and control by any means, including violence, deception, bribe, and miseducation. Many rapists derive power and abuse by abusing their victims, especially daughters who exhibit the purest form of innocent love. Much more will be discussed with our special guests, but up next is a unique report on child abuse.
Sexual abuse comes in many forms. A lot of times the focus is on adults, which overshadows that of minors. Child abuse is a significant public health problem and an adverse childhood experience. Child sexual abuse refers to the involvement of a child, persons under 18 years old, in sexual activity that violates the laws or social taboos of society. Many children wait to report or never report child sexual abuse. Experiencing sexual abuse as a child can affect how a person thinks, acts, and feels over a lifetime. This can result in short and long-term physical, mental, and behavioral health consequences. Examples of physical health consequences include sexually transmitted infections, physical injuries, chronic conditions later in life, such as heart disease, obesity, and cancer. While examples of mental health consequences include depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, amongst others. Experiencing child abuse can also increase a person's risk for future victimization. For example, recent studies have found females exposed to child sexual abuse are at 2 to 13 times increased risk of sexual violence victimization in adulthood. People who experience child sexual abuse are twice the risk for non-sexual intimate partner violence. Today on Perspectives, we will be taking a look at how prevalent child abuse is amongst families, how irregular sentencing of predators are, challenges in the system of bringing them to justice, emotional and mental scars suffered by victims, and its effects on the victims.
Anyway, you know, it is sad because the issue of child abuse is apparently a lot more prevalent in our society than it is, than we give it credit for. And I really think that it should be addressed with the same urgency as you would address any other situation. And I think child abuse is much, much worse when it comes to children, when it's young age, at such young ages. I'm not saying rape or any sexual abuse is even justifiable, but it's just much worse with a child that does not have the emotional intelligence or does not even know how to manage that situation.
And it's so much worse when people don't believe them. When people say, oh, you're making this up, oh, you're mentally ill, oh, I think, no, it didn't happen.
But you see, there's also a very thin line between when you have mental issues, mental health issues, and when you're being abused. One can lead to the other, or you can have mental health issues and just be hallucinating. But like I said yet again, I reiterate, I would never undermine the words that come out of somebody who says that they've been sexually molested before in the past, because I think it goes much, much deeper. And I think some of these fathers who abuse their children were also probably sexually abused as kids. Some of them have a way of repeating itself.
Yeah.
You know,
and if you look at the case, Dr. Femi, that you mentioned, he also denied it. He also said he never did it.
Oh, yes. That's why I'm inviting one of my guests.
The influencers that supported the young girl, if they didn't take on that fight, it never would have been.
One of the influencers is on the show today. And I mean, even when I was speaking to her and I heard the kind of things he got up to and what he said, and you'll be surprised, as his own victim was a 16-year-old. You'll be surprised that some of these sick men think that at the age of 16, as long as you started your period, you're almost like a woman. I mean, when you see all those orange sellers on the streets, those 10-year-old, 12-year-old orange sellers, that these men will come and say, sell your orange. I'm sure some of them are sexually abused.
Babies as young as 6 months old are raped.
Did you hear about the one in South Africa? That a 9-month-old child that was raped, and the man said he did it because apparently if you sleep with a child, it will prevent you from getting AIDS. This was
miseducation,
a public outcry.
Miseducation.
Apart from miseducation, you have to be sick. You have to be also mentally sick to even indulge in such acts.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
It's getting so common.
There's no difference, to me, there's no difference between somebody who abuses children sexually and somebody who sleeps with animals.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, I see it in the same morbidity, and it's disgusting.
Mental regression.
But anyway, we have guests coming on, so let's not take up too much time because we're well into the show. So we are heading for a short break, but stay with us. Perspectives will return in just a moment.
Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Now time to introduce our guests. First is Kemi Ibru. She's a specialist gynecologist with a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins University, as well as continued PhD education in gender-based violence from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Her passion for women's rights led her to found Women at Risk International Foundation to combat and provide education on rape and violence against women and girls. Welcome to Perspectives, Kemi Ibru.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also on the show is Bola Tinubu, the founder of the CC Yara Foundation, a child-centered NGO established to prevent child sexual abuse and provide access to care, information, protection, and emergency intervention for children who have experienced sexual abuse or who are at the risk. The foundation also provides psychosocial, legal, and medical support for children through a 24-hour free telephone helpline, and it's also child-friendly. Welcome to Perspectives, Bola. And then last, welcome to Perspectives, Bola. Good to see you.
Having me.
Okay. And then last on our guest list, none other than Kate Henshaw herself, one of Nigeria's most prominent actresses that has used her name to lend a voice to the fight against sexual abuse. She recently praised Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency for awareness campaigns and war against sexual abuse. Henshaw advises victims of sexual assault and domestic violence to speak up so as to eradicate the menace. Welcome to Perspectives.
Thank you, sis. Thank you. Good morning.
As usual, let me start with the doctor in the house, Madam Ibru. What, let me first wonder, what are the signs that you see of a child that has been sexually abused, and what should children look out for to make them more aware of this abuse? And then is this something that only therapy can heal to make them get over it?
So let's start with the signs, like you said. When you're dealing with child abuse or child sexual abuse, there are firstly social signs that one needs to be mindful of. You need to be mindful of a child that suddenly stays away from a particular adult. Perhaps you're in a social gathering, in a family gathering, and you say to your child, go say hello to Uncle Femi, and the child pulls away. The child doesn't want to say hello to Uncle Femi. You need to be mindful of a child that goes off on his or her own, on so-called errands, or being sent on errands by certain family members. You need to be mindful socially of a child that suddenly has access to money and access to gifts that you can't account for. When you look at the physical signs, and the physical signs are more overt, perhaps a child that is, unfortunately in my part of the world, pregnant at the age of 11 ongoing, or you have a child that has physical signs of abuse when you examine the child. More emotionally, you have a child perhaps that is of a certain age that has gone past the milestones of, say, bedwetting, and suddenly starts bedwetting again.
Okay.
Or a child that suddenly loses appetite and is not eating as much as a child would. And then emotionally, a child that just has a lack of affect. You had a happy child, a wonderful child that would run around and, be very vocal about a lot of things. And suddenly you have a withdrawn child, a child that stays in his or her room, a child that is no longer, acting in the way that one expects. These behavioral signs are also one that we have to be mindful of. And then school. We have children that were doing really well in school. We're very happy to go to school. And then suddenly their grades are slipping. And you can't account for that. Children that start self-harming, you suddenly notice that they're changing in terms of the things that they wear. Suddenly they're wearing very long sleeve clothing. Suddenly that they're hiding their weight loss, because when you lose control from an external source, the only control you have is internal. So the only control and space that you now look inwards towards is like your changes in your diet.
Okay.
And you might notice that they might be losing weight or even putting on weight.
Okay. But even in schools, there have been situations where younger students have been sexually abused by older students.
Absolutely.
And you've had incidents like that?
Yes, we have. We have had incidents like
now,
that.
Kate, in your case, you played a very prominent role in this Dr. Femi Olaleye's case. And you explained how you met him and how you said at one point he admitted, and then after a while he was... So how was he called out?
I've known Femi for over 10 years, worked with him for at least 10 years on advocacy. Anything that concerns women and children has my heart. So he had free reign over using my images for any of his advocacy. I've even raised money for his causes and all of that. So one of the days I had to go to a clinic where he had a collaboration with a clinic on the island. I don't want to mention their name. That day was raining, but when I give my word is my bond. So I showed up and casually asked after his wife, whom I've met on 2 occasions, which were his birthdays, been to his home personally. And he said, oh, we're no more together. And I was shocked. I'm like, oh, what happened? And then he said, she set me up and I fell. I didn't even understand what that meant. I felt, okay, maybe he's done something with another lady who is old enough to know right from wrong. And then he went on to disparage her. He couldn't see his children. I'm like, okay, you just need to take things easy so you can see your children. And then by the time I got home, his wife reached out to me and said she needed to speak to me. And then that led to 4 hours of conversation on the phone, telling me what Femi Olaleye had done. And
at that time, did she tell you about his sexual molestation of her niece?
Yeah, that's when she told me everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So I reached out to him. I'm like, this is what your wife has said. Is there any truth to this? And he says, Kate, I'll need to come and see you. Let me come to your house. I'm like, no, you're not coming to mine. But let me tell you here, straight and now, that if there's any truth in this, I have zero tolerance towards child sexual abuse, molestation, violence of any sort. But remember what you told me, that she set you up and you fell. So that to me is an admission. And then he replies, oh, I don't remember saying anything like that to you.
So instantly...
immediately turn it around. And I'm like, are you calling me a liar? And he said, oh, and then he laughs it, or, you know, he sends a funny emoji. I said, I've told you. So then a few hours later, Princess, the comedian, reaches out to me and says, oh, she's spoken to Femi and she's hearing some whispers. And Femi said, Kate is standing with him. I'm like, She told him point blank, like, you don't know Kate. She's going to call you out no matter who you are, whatever has happened between you before. And then, of course, the woman sent me the video of the girl in question. But
has she gone to the police by this time to report?
This thing started November 2021. That was the first time she heard, she even, I think maybe heard about it. And then she took him to the police station and they got him arrested. And I think he spent some days there, gave his statement to the DPO then and everything. But when he was now released on bail, he changed his story again.
But when he was arrested, when he was arrested, was that before the wife had, I mean, when you spoke to him, was it before he had been arrested and released, or? It
was after, because she had
so at the time he spoke to you,
yes,
he had been arrested already and released?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
The wife had gone public with
she hadn't
before reaching to you?
No.
Okay,
she was told not to go public because he had some strong celebrities supporting him in his advocacy. Myself, Princess, and maybe one or two others that I don't know.
Why she reached out?
Yes, so they told her, like, how are you going to do this? Because he has some celebrities behind him, and it's going to be hard for you to be believed over him, because this is his support group. You know,
you already had that arrest issue before he started making friends with you, the celebrities. So
no, he's had my relationship with him for so long. But what transpired that got him arrested, I had no knowledge about it until I had to do advocacy for him last year.
Okay. Now, where's Bola?
Advocacy.
Bola, can we have Bola, please?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Bola, you've been listening to the back and forth that we've been having, right? Now, the dynamics of child abuse are usually very difficult and not handled, if not properly handled, can really lead the child to go astray. So what are the negative impacts that can contribute to this child abuse? I mean, what kind of situations do you have that instigates it? Does it have to do with the upbringing, or does it sometimes have to do with the way they live?
So child sexual abuse is a very, very complex dynamic, and it's not caused by any one thing. But there are many factors that support sexual abuse in children. So the first thing is your social norms and your traditions. So in Nigeria, one of the things that you'll see is that we actually accept it in a tacit way. Yes, we have these high-profile cases where everyone is up in arms, but generally, child sexual abuse goes on every single day, and people know that children are being abused, and they look away. Then we have our traditional and our religious complexities as well. Some of our religions in Nigeria do allow children to be sexually abused. And by sexually abused, that means any type of sexual activity engaged with a child under 18. So it is allowed in some parts of this country. We do have laws in most parts of the country that mitigate or that do not allow child sexual abuse. But until we address these complexities, those are one of the things that we need to look at. And then you have to look at also the social dynamics as well. Now, child sexual abuse occurs everywhere. So whether you're at home, whether you're in school, whether you're in church, it doesn't matter whether you're of poor means or whether you come from an affluent background. Child sexual abuse applies to every country in the world. In Nigeria, 1 in 4 children, 1 in 4 girls will be sexually violated before they reach the age of 18. And for boys, it's 1 in 10. So that's about 17.5 million children in Nigeria alone that will be sexually abused before they reach the age of 18. So it's a very pervasive issue, and it's something that we need to treat as a serious public health issue. It is a violation of the children's rights and a violation of the human rights as well, and we should treat it as such.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. We do know that the impact of child sexual abuse is heavy. A lot of young girls, young boys go through so much hardships and sufferings afterwards. You mentioned that religion and our laws play a major role in some of the issues in Nigeria today. Can you expatiate on what segment of religion and how we can combat this?
Well, as I said, it's a very complex issue. We do have some religions that allow children, that's anyone under the age of 18, children who have reached the age of puberty, to be married. And that is, unfortunately, it is allowed in some states in Nigeria. So until we do address those issues and we look at this as a wholesale item for the whole country, it will continue in those parts of the country.
Okay. Thank you, Bola, for that. Now, Kemi, I want to ask you, why is the success rate so low? The success rate, which I'm going to also ask you, Kate, the success rate in sentencing of conviction of perpetrators is so low. What can the government do to change this?
Well, first of all, we have to appreciate exactly what Bola said. The complexities of this whole issue of gender-based violence that child sexual abuse falls under is wrought in silence and is stigmatized. Yeah. So a lot of times you're dealing with cases where the survivor cannot come out to speak on it. A common reason is these children have been socialized in homes of violence from such a young age. Many of them don't even have any idea of what's going on, except they're aware that they don't like it. Until they are now made aware by organizations like ours, Cheche Yara, or even school. When they go into social gatherings and into the community, 1 in 4 of their peers, it's happening to them too. So again, they can't even lean on, this is wrong because I've never heard of it. It's actually, on the contrary, it's so commonplace that it appears all of us are dealing with this issue. So when you speak of a problem like that, first you have to look at the laws, as Bola rightly said. The truth of the matter is we actually have decent laws. I mean, we speak of the VAP Act. A lot of us have heard of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. I mean, this is a great law. This is a law that, again, was domesticated in 2015 to, overthrow those antiquated laws that didn't speak on all the different aspects of rape. No, so we're doing well.
Yeah, but even then, there are also good blocks.
Absolutely. No, that's where I'm heading. So that's where I'm heading. So we have the good laws. We can even say that 34 out of 36 states now have the law. But are these laws being implemented?
Execution of it.
Are they being implemented? That's the question.
But what are the challenges when it comes to execution of these laws?
I would say that, for instance, one of the main challenges that we have is that we're dealing with 36 different states that are dealing with this issue in 36 different ways. There's no cohesion. That's one of the challenges that we have. We're dealing with law enforcement that have no sensitivity to the case. We're dealing with law enforcement that probably don't even have an appreciation of why it is important for a girl to be seen in an organization or facility within 72 hours, so we can get the necessary specimens, so we can get the important, if you will, in terms of prosecutions and convictions of these cases, you need to have the burden of proof. But if you don't, because at the end of the day, if you don't have scientific burden of proof with forensic examinations, so it again speaks to sensitivity, training, education. If we see you within 72 hours, we can do the forensics on you.
What if you only find out 3 months or 4 months after?
Therein lies the hindrance. Because it's now your word against mine. And the burden of proof in these cases are very high. And a lot of times, if you don't have proper legal counseling, if you don't have the means, the resources to be able to get the right lawyers, then what happens?
Does WARIF just engage with victims or also with government agencies providing education?
We're official partners, rather. The term is official members of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency.
So you provide education to even law enforcement?
Yes, we have training programs that we have workshops for law enforcement.
Okay, speaking of...
Interestingly enough, they do.
How effective is it?
Interestingly enough, they
But
do.
speaking of law enforcement, Kate, in your case, because you came here to come and be advocate for... How long, for instance, how long did it take for the girl to come out in the open, and how long did it take? What were the challenges faced? You said something about him reaching out to the girl's family.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I only know as far as when I
things?
got involved, when the wife reached out to me, which was last year, and this happened to her the year before. So for 18 months, she had been sexually molested and abused, and of course, disvirgined by Femi Olaleye. So there was that process. It took a while for her to even come out to her auntie. Yeah. Wow. And yes, she didn't say anything. It was just a chance moment where she was sent on an errand, and I think she just got irritated. And she said, "Oh, you people want to kill me in this house?" And she's like, "Excuse me, are you talking to me? Like, you and your husband, you want to kill me?" She said, what is going on? And of course, that moment was the moment of release.
How long was she being abused? Has she been
18
abused?
months.
Wow.
18 months.
But what did you say the man's family tried to do to her to get her to drop her case?
First of all, when she made the confession, because she was now taken to Femi's mom and his aunties or whatever, the mom says, what has her son done that no one has done before?
My God, that's his mother.
Yes, the voice note is there, everything.
Who was with her? Who took her there?
Her auntie and the wife. Okay. Her auntie, the wife, other aunties, they took her to...
So even after the mom heard what happened?
Yes, she was told. The girl was standing. They said, she now sent me a voice note and said, "What, do you want to kill my son? What has he done that nobody?" She spoke it in Yoruba, kill shame, something like that nobody has done before. So that was the first, blockage and all sorts. But even as the case progressed, he was sent to jail because he couldn't meet his bail conditions, and then the trial was going on. Before the sentences of which I was in court for, we heard reliably, and I'm sure there's court affidavits to the effect, he reached out through somebody close to the wife to offer the girl 2.5 million naira.
Can you imagine? I said that to change
her testimony. And the person had called me shaking. I'm like, "Kid, what are we going to do?" I said, "I don't know that much about law, but I know that you perjure yourself if you change your testimony after the fact. So you will go to jail." So there's no way. So they first of all gave the girl 400K and said when she does the video and they have it, they will now give her the 2.1 million naira. As if 2.5 will make everything okay.
Anyway, let's not miss Bola. Where's Bola? Because I have another question for Bola.
There, I'm sure.
Beautiful Bola, where are you?
Yes, she's looking very beautiful. Yes.
I'm right here.
Okay. So even if you can't see you, please, let me ask you. Remember when we were spelling?
And I also thought I would...
Go on.
I also thought I would contribute to the question relating to access to justice
maybe you should answer that before I ask you the next question.
Really...
You can answer that one. Then
yes,
you can ask
and really you
question.
have to look at it... I'm sorry, it appears that there's a bit of a delay.
No, don't worry, go on, we're listening.
Right, so you have to look at it from the three stages that a child has to go through to access that justice and get a conviction. So a child has to disclose the abuse, the child has to go through the investigation, and the child has to go through prosecution. So if we start with the reporting, now that disclosure is very critical in terms of evidence, because the best evidence you can get when it comes to a child sexual abuse case is the evidence of the child. But because we know that children don't speak up by the very nature of the abuse, it's very difficult to get the evidence you need, because children are shamed, they're stigmatized. And then when you look at we really don't have too much data relating to child sexual abuse in Nigeria. But when you look at the rate of disclosure or the rate of children that are able to access help in Nigeria, that percentage is put at 6%.
Wow.
And then you compare it to a country like the UK, where 85% of children, or rather, should I say, there's a range between about 24 to 96%. Depending on the country. So you have countries where the 96% disclosure rate. So you can see that we're a long way away from there.
But that leads me
so reporting and disclosure is a problem.
You know what I was saying to you?
And then by the time you get to the investigative
Go on, Bola. Sorry. Have you finished? Go on, go on.
By the time you get to the investigative stage, that is another challenge that we face, because it's the police that have the statutory responsibility to investigate criminal cases, but they don't have enough training to investigate child sexual abuse cases. And where you don't have a trained forensic expert who is able to elicit the evidence from a child in a way and manner that will stand up in court, then the likelihood of you getting that evidence that you need to put somebody away behind bars, you have to establish your case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Wow.
That also puts that in jeopardy.
Okay.
And then by the time you now get to the prosecution, the delays that we see in courts, the the cost of going back and forth between courts for a lot of Nigerians that live below the poverty line. It just shows that for you to get access to justice and to hold the perpetrators accountable in Nigeria for a child, it's a very, very steep hill to climb.
What's the youngest age that you've had of child molestation? I remember I was asking you that how do you get the information out of the children without having to make them go to the courts and stand? How do you coerce them? What system do you use to get them to tell their story?
So the youngest child we've had at the Chechera Foundation is 5 months. And you can imagine when a child is 5 months, that child is non-verbal. So you cannot get the testimony that you need, which is the best type of evidence. So that means that you have to rely on other forms of evidence. So you now start to ask yourself questions. Okay, were there any witnesses, any eyewitnesses? Is there any other circumstantial information or evidence, or has the perpetrator managed to implicate himself somehow with a confession? So eyewitness testimony is very critical in such cases like that. And it doesn't mean that you have to catch the person red-handed in the act. It just means that perhaps you're able to put the perpetrator in the location where you also know that the abuse happened. You also have to look at physical evidence. So this is where organizations like WARIF come in, where they're able to provide medical physical evidence that will support a claim in court. You also have you have expert testimony that can also come in to corroborate any evidence, any physical evidence. So for instance, in the case that is being discussed today, our organization provided the child forensic interviews that were able to support the corroboration of evidence. And then you look at some similar fact evidence. You can look at previous behaviors of the perpetrator. If there is a pattern that can be established, it's something that is possible for the judge to take into consideration. And by the time you put all the information and all the evidence together, if it's enough to support the charge by proving it beyond that reasonable doubt, then you are able.
Thank you. Let's bring you back to the studio with Kate. It's heartbreaking how many
harrowing.
child sexual cases are out there, not just in Nigeria, but across the world. But in Nigeria, there are very few convictions. You saw this Dr. Olaleye case to the end, despite many challenges. Tell us what pushed you, what motivated you all through the past 1 year, 2 years?
Oh, I was just, for me, it was also his arrogance at it all, his continued showing of no affect, no remorse whatsoever. And I prayed and I hoped that this one time, with all the evidence that has been put through, with having Chechera, because also Mirabel Center, I was in court the day they also gave their evidence. I prayed and I hoped that it would not go the way of, oh, he has powerful people behind him, or he can buy this person, and this person can protect him. Because I remember the day there was a protest in front of his office, he only had to call the Bode Thomas police station, and they sent some policemen to move away the women who were there to speak about what was going on. So we just prayed, and I heard good thing about the judge. That, I mean, if your evidence is solid, and you're not going to go free in a Justice Ramano Shodi court, who is in charge of the sexual offences court. So I prayed, and I just hoped. And when he went to jail, because he couldn't meet his bail conditions, I had a bit of hope. I think it was 40 or 50 million with people with landed properties and all that. So, but I expected his rich friends to come through for him, but
you know, what I couldn't even get over was when he came out and actually
and
waved.
it was.
Did you see it? He actually
that
waved.
Is a
And I'm thinking, you're waving for what?
Narcissistic.
Talk about narcissists to the core.
I won't lie to you. Right there in the courtroom, he sat behind me like here.
And
he kept a seat for one of his friends here, and one was behind. And I cannot forget his body language all through coming through.
No remorse.
Nothing. He was always with his Ray-Bans and everything. And then they fist bumped themselves.
No way.
I'm not even lying on
him and his friend.
Yes, when that one came in, they did that. And then the one there. I was seething with rage. And okay, Lord help me, you know. And I was more than overjoyed. You know, and that was the only time he bowed his head, when he was on the stand.
Of course.
When he heard it was 2 life sentences to run concurrently. And the judge noticed it. He said, you should not be in society with others. That was what the judge said. Yes. He said, you are not remorseful.
The collaborative efforts. People who supported you in this
there's so many, some fantastic women. You know, there's Cheche Yara, there's Mirabel Center, there's Warif, there's Tonya. I spoke to you about her. Yes. She's in court. That woman is in court every other day.
But you also spoke about challenges.
Yes, challenges.
You know, we can't finish if we start on that one today.
Okay, people coming to the DM. Even this guy who took money to go and give to the girl, he reached out to me after the court.
Are you serious?
I still have the messages. Me, I like to keep evidence. And then he said, "Oh, my sister, please check very well. He didn't do anything to her. Please, you do your investigation."
He was still defending his
friends. Yeah. So I said, this is what you did. I know about you. I'm not just someone on the outside looking in. I am involved in this case. And you are related to Remy. You are the one who collected the money. To God, why would you do this? I said, don't reach out to me again, else you will not find it funny.
Okay. Speaking about money issues, now, Kemi, let me address you. I had this maid one time. You know how they live in this, they face me, I face you. So normally, in some cases, a landlord actually lives in the
compound.
Property.
Right.
So she said to me that the landlord was a pedophile. And what he used to do was sexually molest the children of the tenants. Right. And he had molested a 3-year-old, he had molested a 5-year-old. And that at some point, what he did was that if you find out that your child has been sexually molested, all he does is that you don't pay rent for 1 year. And there have been tenants who have been staying there for years on end, even with
they're okay with it.
Yes, they're okay with it.
Yep.
So I wanted to now ask, in such a situation, of course, these people don't have any monies to go to court or whatever.
Even the process.
Yes. So how do you raise funds to enable, try to make sure that justice is served when you hear of such cases?
And many of these families are silently complicit because of these poverty challenges, like you rightly said. And that breaks one's heart, because these are children. And just before I forget, it's so important that we emphasize the bravery of the survivor in Dr. Femi's case. Because as Bola rightly said, the witness testimony, the survivor's testimony is critical, and she was so articulate.
She was.
Yes.
And she was
but
very
concise. She was 16, so to a certain extent,
she was able to,
enough.
and she stood, and then she didn't back down. 75% of the cases at the Warri Center are recanted.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So we start the process in good faith. And for whatever reason, and many a time, some of the time, the reason could be an exchange of some sort of, financial incentive
but
from
they
the
have
perpetrator.
To recant their whatever. Can't you insist
legally, fortunately in Lagos State, there's mandatory reporting.
That's
so whether or not you say to me, please don't speak on it or tell, we have to. But at the end of the day, if you have a family that have decided to go forward through the judicial system and then recant, what do you do? They either perjure themselves, as you said, you made reference to somebody thinking about it, or they conveniently forget, or they stop bringing the survivor at the appointed time. I mean, they can make it very difficult and actually obstruct the case with their actions.
For those that recant, do you still have some sort of relationship with them?
Absolutely. You stand in the gap forever. You hope that at the appointed time they come back. And that when you come back, you're ready again to receive them. You never turn anyone away. And you never leave anyone behind.
Before we came here, you go ahead and do the needful. But will the needful be done?
Exactly. Because I know that you guys face a lot of challenges, even the bottleneck process.
Absolutely.
To get to that.
It's
the bureaucracy, the delay and the bureaucracy, just even the legal bureaucracy.
Exactly, and that is enough to put any victim off, especially if you can't afford it, and then you have not been bribed. But anyway, let's get back to Bola. Is Bola, we want to go back to you. Okay, Bola.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you? Can you tell us a story about the girl whose baby was sold and what has happened to that baby so far? And then also, who do you have in your shelter now and how long can they stay? What usually happens, or how are they usually prepared, packaged to live and be able to survive on their own? So those are 3 questions. Did you hear my question, Bola?
Actually not able to.
Keep in the studio.
Specific cases that we handle, because we do have to ensure that we keep some of this.
Okay, I think we've lost Bola. Bola, are you still there with us?
But I think you can take that question. Absolutely.
Yes, I can hear you.
No, Bola can hear. She can hear. Bola, we can hear Bola. Bola, go ahead.
I can hear you.
Oh, great.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So I was just telling you that I'm unable to discuss the details of any of our ongoing cases at the moment. But what I can say is this, that our shelter is a specialized shelter for children who have experienced abuse. And what we do is that where we have to take children out of offending environments, we take them to our shelter where they're able to access the help that they need in terms of therapy and support. But the intention is never to keep them there permanently. A child will thrive best when they're amongst their family that are non-offending. So as long as there are family members who are able to take care of the child and provide the support and the nurturing that is necessary for that child to heal, we will try and place that child back as soon as possible. But it depends on a number of cases, on a number of factors. It depends on the impact of the abuse on the child, the circumstances of the case, whether they are family members. But typically they would stay with us for about 3 months.
Okay.
Did you say 3 months?
3 months.
I think you wanted to add to...
I was just going to say, similar, when we talk about the age of the youngest survivor at the Warrior Center, only 7 months of age.
Oh, wow. I mean, to ask another quick question before we go, because we're running out of time. How does your foundation raise funds to pursue these courses? And aside from even this, when they leave your shelter, what do you provide for them to give them a soft landing when they get back into society?
So with regards to fundraising in general, for any NGO or any philanthropic organization, a lot of us rely on grants. So we spend a lot of time writing proposals to raise grants. A lot of us rely on donations. This could be corporate donations, sustainable donations from CSR, or could be individual donations. Some of us use different crowd fund platforms like the Global Giving. Other times it could be a function of a governmental partnership or collaboration. And then therefore we then enter it and then we address the aspect when it comes to gender-based violence and the needs of women and children.
Okay, but for a woman whose child has been sexually molested by the father and they don't really have much, maybe pepper seller or they're really, really poor, is there any funds made available to them to help them at least start a new life in case, if it's better for them to be out of that home?
So what we do at our facility, because we don't have a shelter, so we have a walk-in facility, but we've incorporated into our frameworks welfare services.
Okay.
So for instance, a survivor comes in and it's immediately apparent that home is the place of abuse. You can't go back. We have a referral system to listed shelters, including Checheyara. So it is then our responsibility to ensure that we take that survivor from our facility directly to the shelter. The same with legal aid. Women want justice, but they can't get a lawyer. They can't afford a lawyer. So we offer them pro bono services through the legal referral system that we've created. And it speaks to other legal organizations that also raise funds. You asked about, the legal aspect and how do they get funding. And then finally, vocational skills. Many of the women we see make poor choices because they're not empowered financially. If you're able to financially empower her, the idea is that then she starts to make the right choices.
Thank you so much. As usual, never enough time for such a sensitive topic. Case, Mama Henshaw. So make them know say aside from exercise, you get voice for this matter. Thank you so much.
And I'll continue to till the day I die.
Thank you so
God
much,
help me.
Henshaw.
Thank you,
sis.
sis.
Thank you both for
Beautiful
coming
Kemi.
today.
Thank you for
so
being
much.
with us
Thank you
again.
so much.
And then Bola. Bola, is there Bola there?
Bola is in the UK.
In the UK.
Yay.
Bola, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you had a good time. We hope to hear from you guys more often because this is a crusade that should not be taken lightly. Thank you so much for being here on Perspectives with us. Okay. As victims of child abuse grow older, the riveting, empowering feelings that engulf them during the moments of their abuse do not change with knowledge, awareness, or new experiences. The memory of their torture remains locked inside until they are taught how to release them through counseling. For some, the pain subsides over time. For others, it can continue to linger and fester. But with the right approach in addressing the problem, slowly but surely, time eventually heals. When thrown into the pool and left to drown in your sorrow, you learn how to kick and reach for the surface and swim through your trauma. And as I always say, life is a learning curve. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime. See you next week.
And with me, Olatorera Majekodunmi-Oniru. Unabused children tend to have higher self-esteem, greater independence, and overall contentment with life. We want success for every single child. Consensual pleasure is a human right to every living thing, and every adult must understand that children do not have the mental wisdom or educational strength to give their consent in most situations. Healthy child development, freedom of human nature, and greater humanity are three keys to a better world today. Our world needs a much stronger dosage of healthy love, consensual pleasure, and happiness. Thank you for watching Perspectives. Thanks to our special guests. Have a great weekend. See you all soon.